This is a hard teaching. Who can accept it? The problem is all three of these lessons have things in them that are hard for the people of God to accept because they're hard for everyone to accept. All three lessons contain things that are just plain difficult. Now let me assure you before we get into this too far that the Bible is supposed to make you uncomfortable. There are comforting words, but there are also discomforting words, words that push at us and make us think about the way we're living. They push at us and make us consider our goals and our purpose. Mark Twain once wrote, "Most people are bothered by those passages in the Scriptures which they cannot understand. But as for me, I always notice that the passages in Scriptures which trouble me most are the ones I do understand." And so that's what we're going to push at today. And we start with this reading from Joshua. Now, remember what this is. This is part of Joshua's farewell speech. He's dying. This comes at the very end of the book of Joshua, and the book of Joshua is about the conquest of the Promised Land. See, everybody thinks that when you get to something you've been waiting for and waiting for and waiting for, all your problems are solved. But they're not. When we get back into the renovated building, there'll be problems for us to solve. And when the people of God got to the Promised Land after wandering in the desert for 40 years, not 40 months, 40 years, they had problems to solve. They had to conquer the land. And the problem, the enduring problem that they had was polytheism. But they didn't start when they got to the Promised Land. They brought it with them. Joshua told them, "Throw away the gods your forefathers worshipped beyond the river and in Egypt." And one of the analyses of why the wandering in the desert took so long is that the Jews were being taught how to be monotheists. They were going to worship one God. Worship one God. Throw away the other gods. Throw away the gods of the Amorites. Throw away the Egyptian gods. Worship one God. And they said they would. But the problem wasn't solved for another 700 or 800 years. It kept on until the Babylonian captivity. But here we see that the people are being asked to make a choice. Do you want the God, Yahweh? Do you want one God? Or do you want all these other things? And it was a hard choice. The second lesson is from Ephesians. And as you remember, the last several Sundays, as we've gone through Ephesians, St. Paul has been telling us some difficult things tough things. Give up lying. Give up maliciousness. Give up your rage. Give up all that stuff that separates you from the love of God. But he doesn't stop there. He doesn't stop there. That sounds so good. Yeah, all you people, you need to do that. But this week he's actually meddling. Submit one to another. Submit one to another. And that's a word most Americans don't ever like hearing. Submit. I don't know if this is the land of the free. I'm going to do it myself. And I've told you over and over again about going to camp one summer, sitting down in a discussion group, and this one 8th grade girl just had that attitude. Nobody can tell me nothing. And so I tried to be brave and said, you know, if the police officer pulls you over, you better pull over. If the IRS sends you a little love note and says send in the money, you better send in the money. If the Selective Service writes you a little letter saying you have been selected by your friends and neighbors to become reacquainted with the U.S. Army, you better go. There are all sorts of entities in America that have the power to make you submit. But in church, you choose to submit. And what St. Paul is saying here is in holy matrimony, you choose to submit to one another, because if you will, it'll work a lot better. It will work a lot better. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And so holy matrimony becomes an example, a Christian example of how Christ loved the church. He loved all of us by dying for us. And that's what husbands are called to do for their wives, is to die for them. And this act of submission is really an act of love. But a lot of people don't want to hear it. And this young lady didn't want to hear it either. And so she got me thrown out of the group. I'm still amazed at that. And I never went back because nobody in charge of that camp session would ever tell me what my role was as a priest. That the kids could get me thrown out of the group. I had no authority. And now we turn to this lesson from St. John, and St. John has got something hard for us as well. You know, Jesus has been trying to teach his disciples about who he is. I am the bread that came down from heaven. And unless you eat this bread and drink this wine, you cannot live. And they are so offended. They are so offended. And this is how you can tell that this is a hard saying. They're just so offended. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there are people in every area of life who just get so offended. And you know, when they get so offended, they don't have to cooperate, do they? They don't have to do what you've agreed you're going to do because they're so offended. The person who walks out because you're using plastic cutlery instead of silver. I had a guy walk out of church because the opening hymn wasn't in the hymnal. And I thought, you know, in a new church start, that's not the kind of guy you need. And we're going to have people who walk out of Trinity Church because we don't have pews for everybody. Oh, that's not really a church. Okay, okay. See, what Jesus is trying to help them understand is, what's the mission? What's the goal? Why are you here?